Welcome to Faith in Front. Today, this topic is really important to me. I have been shooting videos, trying to get ahead of the game, trying to give myself some pad, and I've been trying to figure out what video would be the best video to upload first to this new YouTube channel. And I think today's topic is so important because if we can't get this topic right, then what difference does it make? Or why should we talk about God or what's right or wrong or anything like that if we can't get this topic right? So today we're going to be talking about the importance of truth, because if we can't get a handle on what is true, then it really doesn't matter what I say in videos to come. It really doesn't matter what you say from this day forward if we really can't get a handle on what truth is. You may have seen this on TV. You may have seen someone very distinguished looking, maybe look up and just say, "What is truth?" And if you're not careful, they can catch you because you'll find yourself going, what is he talking about? Because there's normally someone with, PhDs or all kinds of letters behind their names or something like that. And they'll just very deep like, what is truth? Like they're pondering something deep instead of something dumb. You take that same person that says, what is truth? And you put them in a courtroom. And let's say, for instance, they have been accused of a crime, a heinous crime that they did not commit. And they're standing before the judge and the jurors. Now, do you think that person's going to stand there and say, what is truth? No. Why? Because they know the truth is they didn't do it. Okay? You think that same person is going to look at the judge and the jurors and say, well, in the words of Oprah, rock your truth. Rock your truth. You think they're going to look at the judge and jurors and say, well, my guilt might be true for you, but not for me. For me, I'm innocent. But if I'm guilty and that's true for you, then oh well. Yeah, right. So it's kind of funny how that happens. But these are the times we're living in, where you hear those statements. Well, that might be true for you, but not for me. Some people have even said, very intellectual, there is no truth. Really? Hey, if you hold to that position, that there is no truth, then unfortunately, you probably shouldn't talk. Because what you've just admitted to is that everything you've said, everything you are currently saying, and everything that you will say isn't true. If you really hold to this, there is no truth. And it's kind of scary because these thoughts are being said by people on college campuses and professors and people we hold in high esteem because, they have PhDs and things like that. Now, what I'm about to say, I don't want anyone to get mad, okay? If you have a PhD, that's great. That's a great accomplishment. But with some of the nonsense we hear that we, can hear today from people with PhDs, yeah, sometimes it seems like PhD stands for pretty heavy doo-doo because that's about all it amounts up to. Okay? I mean, because people with PhDs, they will say this kind of stuff. Okay? How do we get here? How did we get here? Where truth is just all over the place. It's all over the place. So what we're going to talk about really quick is subjective truth and objective truth. Subjective truth is basically truth based on your personal preference. Okay? It might be your favorite ice cream flavor. Like I like pralines and cream. You might like strawberry, chocolate, vanilla. So if someone said to you, what's the best ice cream? You would probably say your personal preference. When you look in sports, I hear people arguing all the time, especially in basketball. Who's the GOAT? Is it Michael Jordan? Is it LeBron? Okay? Because people have their personal preferences. And that's okay in certain circumstances. Those who are in the creative space, they may be looking at how I'm lit and saying, I would have lit that differently, because they have another preference of how they use light. And that's okay. So then we move on to objective truth. Objective truth is truth that's not determined by how we feel or our emotions or our preference. It's just the truth. In other words, whether you like it or not. There are objective truths out there. Okay, right now as I am shooting this, it is dark outside. Okay, now I know in some other part of the world the sun is shining. Sun is always shining, just depending on where it is. Okay, so whether you want the sun to shine or not, it's always shining somewhere. Okay, even when there's overcast. Okay, the sun is still shining. That's just a truth, regardless of how you may feel. So what's going on today? Today, we have topics being meshed. There are topics that should be in the subjective truth pot that are now being put in the objective truth pot. I mean, who would have known that the truth now is that I'm a man because somewhere along the way I chose to be one, or the women that I see, I just see women. But today, gender is a subjective truth, not an objective truth. So now it's, well, like, she's a woman, but in today's standard, she's a woman because somewhere in her life, she chose to be one. Okay? So you see, we have things that once were, and I still believe that gender is objective, okay? But this is what's going on in the culture today. You also have God and morality, what's right and wrong, being put in the subjective truth pot. And I can see why someone would want to do that, okay? Because if God is now subjective, it's really just another way of getting rid of God, because now God is only God because God works for you. Someone might say, oh, you're a Christian? Oh, well, if that works for you, you catch that? So what they're really saying is that, well, if it works, it's true. If it's your preference, it's true. Now, why in the world would I want to serve a God that's only legitimate because I prefer that God to be? I don't want to serve a God like that. I want to serve a God who's God whether I like it or not, whether I worship him or not. That's God, not a God who's only God because it works or that's my preference. You take right and wrong. There are things now in the subjective pot, okay? I believe that it is objectively wrong to assault someone. And you might say, well, I do too. Really? Because if you remove the objective standard of how we come to what's right and wrong, which I believe is God, I believe God is the objective standard by which we determine what's right and wrong. If you remove God or make God subjective, okay, and just make God this fluid concept, okay, then if the objective moral standard by which we determine what's right and wrong is now all of a sudden subjective, then everything will have to be subjective that follows. Now, yes, it's true that there are some who will say, well, there is no God. Okay, well, if there is no God, then the question is how do you determine what's right and wrong? What's the standard that you look to determine what's right and wrong? Well, if there's no God, it would have to be you. Now, the problem with that is if what's right and wrong is and value is now determined by just man and not an objective standard outside of man, we're in trouble. And I think history has already proven that. History is already proving that the worst place for truth to start is in the subjective truth of man. You take Hitler. His subjective truth was that the Jews were less than, and other groups of people were less than. That was never the objective truth. The objective truth is that we are all equal. But his subjective truth caused the Holocaust. You take slavery in this country. The subjective truth of the oppressor was that the African was less than. And that subjective truth reigned for a while. And that's why it was hard for Black people in this country for a while to get objective rights, because the definition of who we were subjective. But the objective truth was we're all equal. But how are we all equal? Well, because we all bear the image of God. We all get our worth and intrinsic value from God. But if you remove God, then unfortunately, yes, the only place that right and wrong value can start is in the subjective preference of man. And I think history has already proven, when you look at Stalin and these other dictators who have killed millions of people, that you might be thinking, well, what's wrong with truth starting with man? Well, problem is that those in power will always stomp out those who are vulnerable. But I'm thankful that God is the objective standard. But when you remove God, you get chaos. God is the objective truth. He's not a subjective truth. Now, yeah, we can talk about whether it's Islam, Christianity, that's I'm just talking about God. Okay, I am a Christian and I believe that is the objective truth. Okay, but when you remove that or try to put God in the subjective truth pod, confusion, chaos. Think about this. Let's say, for instance, just for one day, we removed all the speed limit signs and people could just drive whatever way they wanted to, according to their subjective preference. Now, some of you are getting excited, but then some of you are going, that would be chaos. Why? Because when you remove the objective standard, now everyone can drive according to what's right in their own eyes, and you'll have just chaos. But that's what happens when you remove the objective standard or try to redefine what an objective truth is and make it a subjective truth. It would be chaos, because truth brings stability. And for those who are Christians, we all know that the belt of truth is one of our pieces of armor to fight in the spiritual battles that we fight. Truth stabilizes. Untruths just bring chaos and all kinds of things. What will you use to determine what truth is? Will it be a standard outside of yourself, like God, who's an objective truth? Or will it be you? Will it be your feelings, your emotions? And someone might say, well, what's wrong with that? Well, feelings, emotions, they're all over the place. And yes, they're real. We experience them, but they're all over the place. That's why someone will say, I love you today, but I don't love you tomorrow, because their feelings change. You want that to be the standard by which you draw or conclude what truth is? We have to get truth right. We have to keep God the objective standard by which we determine what's right and wrong, what's true. Because if you want to live by, well, all truth is subjective, and that might be true for you, but not for me. I mean, it's kind of funny because I don't think anyone buys that across the board. Okay, you can't go into your bank and say, "Hey, I want to withdraw $100,000," and they look at you and say, "Well, you only have $2,000." Or you're going to look at the bank teller and say, "Well, that might be true for you, but not for me." You're not going to do that because you know the objective truth is what you have. Okay, so so we kind of see this kind of where people kind of use it when it works. We're living in a society where people will throw a dart, and wherever the dart lands, then they will draw a bullseye around and go, "Oh, look, I hit it." Versus, no, an objective mark that it's fixed that you hit. But we live in a society that says, "Oh no, just wherever I throw my dart, wherever it lands, I'll just circle a bullseye around it." That's subjective truth. Instead of trying to hit an objective target. So we have to keep these things in mind. So once again, subjective truth is just truth based on personal preference. Objective truth is truth that's true no matter what your feelings are, how you know, your emotions, your preference. It doesn't matter. That's what objective truth is. And I believe God is the objective truth. Jesus says, "I'm the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes to the Father except through me." And now, I don't want you to think that I'm saying there's truth and then there's God. Okay? I don't want you to think that. But we have to get this right. Because if you think about a set of dominoes, if the first domino represents truth and you knock that over, then everything falls afterwards, right? That's why truth is so important. And that's why I decided that the first video that I'm going to upload is going to be on this topic. Because as we go, we have to have a handle on truth. So I hope that this has been helpful, beneficial, and I ask that you please like, subscribe, and share because truth is important. And I look forward to seeing you in the next videos to come.